The stranger at the gas station. The year was 1963. The air in that small Midwestern town always smelled faintly of gasoline and rust. By then, Grandma Ma'am was barely in her 20s, working the counter at a roadside gas station. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept her busy, and busy was better than lonely. Every evening, she'd watch the same horizon swallow the sun, painting the sky in orange and gold. Cars came and went, soldiers returning home, families on road trips, salesmen chasing luck. But that day, something was different. Just before dusk, a black Chevrolet pulled up, old, but shining like it had just rolled out of a dream. A tall man stepped out. His face was half hidden beneath a gray hat, but what caught her attention wasn't his eyes. It was the scar, a pale, jagged line running from his temple down to his jaw. He didn't say much at first. Just handed her a $5 bill and whispered, "Fill her up. Premium if you've got it." His voice was calm, but there was something underneath, something tired. As she pumped the gas, she couldn't help but steal glances. His hands were strong, calloused but shaking slightly, like someone carrying too much memory. When she brought Miles later, she saw it. The black Chevrolet crumpled against a tree. The windshield shattered, smoke still clinging faintly to the metal. But what caught her breath was what lay nearby. A small box, half buried in the wet grass. Inside the box was a letter addressed simply to her. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The ink was smudged, the paper torn, but the words were still legible. If you ever find this, know that I never stopped waiting. I was young, stupid, and scared. But I kept your picture near my heart every single day. I left to protect you. And I paid for it with every mile I drove away. She folded the letter back, tears stinging her eyes. That scar on his face, it wasn't just from an accident. It was life's way of marking a man who'd already burned once before. The woman and her child never came back to that town. But Grandma kept that photograph for years, tucked inside her diary. Whenever someone asked her why she still believed in forgiveness, she'd simply say, "Because I once met a man with a scar, and he taught me that some apologies never die, even when the people who deserve them are gone." The letter that wouldn't burn, the storm that night seemed endless. The kind of rain that felt more like a cleansing than a curse. Mary Ellen sat by her window, the photograph and the letter spread before her like pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The man with the scar was gone. At least, that's what the sheriff had said. But Grandma never believed it completely. She'd seen too much in her life to think closure came that easily. The following morning, when the sky finally cleared, she packed both the letter and the photograph into her old satchel and set out to find her, the woman in the picture. She didn't have much to go on, only a name faintly scribbled in one corner of the image. For Lillian. The nearest directory office was in Springfield, a good 30 miles away. It took her 2 buses and a long walk to get there, but she didn't care. Something inside her needed to know. Not for curiosity, but for peace. After hours of searching through old address books and phone listings, a clerk finally looked up. "There's a Lillian Moore in St. Joseph," he said. "Been there since '59. That name hit her like a heartbeat. She thanked him and left immediately. It was late evening when she reached St. Joseph, the sun dipping low, painting everything gold and red. The town smelled of fresh bread and coal. Every house looked like it had secrets behind lace curtains. She finally found it. A small white house with peeling paint and a wind chime that sang softly in the breeze. A boy, about 10 now, was sitting on the porch, carving shapes into a piece of wood. His gray eyes lifted as she approached. "Hello," he said politely. "Are you lost?" Mary Ellen smiled faintly. "No, sweetheart. I think I might have found what I was looking for." A woman appeared behind him, older now, her face lined by time and sadness. But Mary Ellen recognized her instantly. "Lillian?" she whispered. The woman's eyes widened. "Do I know you?" Mary Ellen slowly held out the letter and photograph. "He wanted you to have these." For a moment, the world stood still. Lillian took the letter, her hands trembling as she unfolded it. The little boy leaned closer, confused. As her eyes moved across the words, tears began to fall. Silently at first, then uncontrollably. "I thought he was dead," she whispered. "He left before I could tell him." "The truth," Mary Ellen frowned softly. "The truth?" Lillian looked at her son, then back at the photograph. "That boy in the picture isn't just someone he left behind. He's his son." Mary Ellen felt her breath leave her, the boy's eyes, that same gray she couldn't forget. Everything made sense now. Lillian pressed the letter to her chest. "He never knew. He left to protect us," he said. "But the truth is, I was the one who was afraid. He'd gotten mixed with the wrong people after the war. There were debts, threats. I begged him to run. I told him to stay away." Mary Ellen sat beside her on the porch. "And now?" Lillian looked at the horizon. "Now I'd give anything for one more day to tell him I was wrong." The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of rain again. Mary Ellen looked down at the photograph one last time. The edges were curling now, darkened by the fire. but it still carried their faces, frozen in the only happy moment they ever had. She whispered softly, "Maybe. In some way, he heard you." That night, Mary Ellen couldn't bring herself to sleep. She stayed in a small inn nearby, staring at the photograph under the dim light. And that's when she noticed it. The faintest marking on the bottom corner, burned but visible. It wasn't just soot. It was handwriting, small, deliberate, almost hidden beneath the smoke stains. It read, "Not dead yet." Her heart stopped. The last goodbye. The next morning, she returned to the crash site. The car was still there, wrecked, charred, lifeless. But something deep in her heart whispered that the story wasn't finished. She asked around. "The sheriff said they never found a body." "Probably burned too bad," he muttered. But his tone didn't sound convinced. For weeks, she kept going back. She'd leave small notes near the site, simple ones. "If you're alive, she forgives you. Your son has your eyes. You were loved." Months passed. Seasons changed. The gas station was eventually sold, and she moved on to a new town. But one winter morning, as she unlocked her small apartment door, she found an envelope slipped underneath. No return address. Just one word on the front. "Thank you." Inside was a photograph. New this time. A man, older, with the same scar but softer eyes, standing on a pier somewhere near the coast. And beneath it, a line in his familiar handwriting. "I saw them. They're safe." That's enough. Grandma's voice trembled even years later when she told this part of the story. She said she never saw him again. But sometimes when she passed a long stretch of road and saw an old Chevy drive by, she'd swear she could hear his voice in the distance. Calm, steady, and free. "Some scars don't hurt anymore," he'd once told her. "They just remind you that you survived."